Imagine you're sitting at a table. In front of you are a spoon, a key, a toy car, and a pencil. Someone flashes a word on a screen. Not for both your eyes, just for one side. You do not say anything. You say you saw nothing. But then your left hand reaches forward and picks up the key. Now someone asks you, "Why did you pick up the key?" And your mouth answers, "Oh, because I needed to open something." Except that is not why. Your mouth did not know why. One half of your brain saw the instruction, the other half had to explain the choice. Instead of saying, "I have no idea," your brain did something very human. It made up a story, not a lie, a story. A little emergency explanation, a mental receipt printed after the purchase. And this is where split brain experiments stop being a science topic and start feeling like a locked room mystery. Because the question is not just, what does the brain do? The question is, who exactly is you? When one part of your brain knows something, another part does not. Let's start with the bridge. Inside your skull, your brain has two hemispheres, left and right. They are not identical twins. They are more like siblings who share a house, argue about the thermostat, and somehow still get the bills paid. In most people, the left hemisphere is more involved in language. The right hemisphere is often stronger with certain spatial tasks, faces, and big picture patterns. But please, tiny warning sign here. This does not mean the internet version of left brain logical, right brain creative is true. That version is the personality quiz of neuroscience. Fun at parties, suspicious in daylight. Both halves of your brain are involved in almost everything you do. Thinking, feeling, moving, recognizing, planning. Getting distracted by one notification and somehow losing 23 minutes of your life. The two halves are constantly talking, and the main bridge between them is called the corpus callosum. It is a thick bundle of nerve fibers connecting the left and right hemisphere. Think of it like a massive underground cable between two cities. Messages cross it constantly. Left side says, "I have visual information." Right side says, "I have spatial context." Left side says, "We need words." Right side says, "I think that face looks angry." And together they create the smooth experience you call yourself. One person, one mind, one continuous me. At least that's how it feels. But what exactly happens when the bridge is cut? Not metaphorically, actually cut. In some severe epilepsy cases, surgeons used a procedure called corpus callosotomy. The goal was not to create a mystery for psychology students, the goal was medical. Some seizures spread from one hemisphere to the other through corpus callosum. So, by cutting that connection, doctors could reduce how far the seizure actually traveled. For some patients, this helped. And in ordinary life, many split brain patients seemed surprisingly normal. They could walk, talk, eat, laugh, recognize people, live their lives. If you met them casually, you might not notice anything strange at all, which is somehow the strangest part, because under right testing conditions, researchers found something unbelievable. The two hemispheres could be given different information, and they would sometimes respond like they were not reading the same script. Here is the trick. Your visual system crosses. Information from left side of your visual field mostly goes to the right hemisphere. Information from the right side of your visual field mostly goes to the left hemisphere. So if a word appears very quickly on the left side of a screen, it can mainly be sent to the right hemisphere. And if the person's corpus callosum is cut, that information cannot easily cross over to the left hemisphere. Why does that matter? Because for most people, speech is mainly controlled by the left hemisphere. So the right hemisphere may receive information, but speaking left hemisphere may not know about it. That means the person may say, "I didn't see anything," but their hand might still choose the correct object. It is like one roommate got the message and the other roommate answered the door. Awkward household management. Imagine the word ring flashes to the right hemisphere. The person says they saw nothing. But with the left hand, which is controlled mostly by the right hemisphere, they reach into a bag and pick out a ring. Now pause there. This is not just weird, that is a crack in the floor. Because something inside the person processed the word. Something understood it enough to guide the hand. But the part that could speak did not know. So when asked, what did you see? The person says nothing. And both things are true in their own way. The speaking mind saw nothing. Another part of the brain received the message. So who saw it? This is where the room gets quiet. Because we usually imagine consciousness as one spotlight. One person sitting in the control room. One little me behind the eyes, watching the screen and pressing the buttons. But split brain research suggests the brain is not built like that. It may be less like one king on a throne and more like a group chat with extreme high stakes. Most of the time the messages sync. So you feel like one smooth self. But if the connection is disrupted, the hidden teamwork becomes visible. And the most unsettling part may be what happens next, the explanation. In one famous type of experiment, researchers showed one image to one hemisphere and another image to another hemisphere. For example, one side might see snow and the other side might see a chicken claw. Then one person is asked to choose the matching images. One hand points to a shovel, the other hand points to a chicken. That part makes sense. Snow goes with the shovel, chicken claw goes with the chicken. But when the person is asked, why did you choose those? And the speaking hemisphere answers. It says something like the chicken claw goes with the chicken and you need the shovel to clean out the chicken shed. Beautiful, confident, wrong. The shovel was chosen because of the snow. But the speaking side did not know about the snow. So it created a reason using the information it had. And here is the tiny horror movie inside your skull. Your brain does not always experience why you did something. Sometimes it explains why it thinks you did something. After the fact, with confidence, like a lawyer who arrived late but still wants to bill the hour. And before we laugh at the split brain patient, we need to be careful. Because this might not be a bizarre exception. It might be an exaggerated version of something all of us do. You decide you do not want cake because you're being healthy. But maybe you're actually full. You say you dislike the person because they seemed arrogant. But maybe their face reminded you of someone who hurt you. You buy something and then spend 5 minutes explaining how practical it is. Sure, very practical. A completely necessary midnight purchase. The brain loves reason. Reason makes us feel stable. Reason makes life feel less like chaos with wearing shoes. So when your behavior appears first, your explanation may sometimes come second. The split brain experiments made that visible. They showed a brain caught in the act of narrating itself. Not because the person was stupid, not because the person was dishonest, because the brain is a meaning-making machine. It hates blank spaces. If there is a gap, it fills it. If there is a choice, it justifies it. If there is a mystery, it writes a small detective novel and stamps case closed on the folder. But the case may not be closed. Case may be wearing sunglasses in the back of the room. Now, does this mean the split brain patients have two separate people inside one skull? Careful. That is the tempting headline, but real science is messier. Some researchers argue split brain patients show divided processing, not necessarily two separate conscious selves. Others think the findings force us to rethink what unity of consciousness really means. And newer research keeps complicating the picture. The brain has more than one bridge, more than one pathway, and more than one way to coordinate information. So we should not turn these patients into spooky internet myths. They are real people who had serious medical conditions. The experiments are fascinating, but they come from human lives, not magic tricks. Still, the mystery remains. Because even if we do not say two people, we still have to explain this. How can one part of the person respond to information, another part cannot report? How can a hand know what a mouth denies? How can a brain act first and explain later? And what does that say about normal consciousness? Let's make it even stranger. Your right hemisphere controls the left side of your body. Your left hemisphere controls the right side. So, in some experiments, the left hand could do something the speaking left hemisphere did not understand. That means a person could perform an action with one hand, then verbally explain it with the hemisphere that did not initiate it. It's like asking the wrong employee with the office printer why the office printer is on fire. They were not involved, but they will still say, probably routine maintenance. Human brains are experts at routine maintenance, even when smoke is coming out of the plot. This is why split brain research feels so uncomfortable. It pokes at the part of us that believes we know ourselves from the inside. We like to believe I made that choice. I know why I made it. My mind is one thing, my story is accurate, but the brain says adorable. Because underneath your awareness, there are systems making predictions, detecting patterns, preparing movements, choosing words, regulating emotions, and pulling old memories out of storage. By the time you notice a thought, a lot has already happened backstage. Consciousness may be less like a CEO and more like a press secretary. It comes out after the meeting and explains the decisions. Sometimes accurately, sometimes with excellent confidence and questionable paperwork. Now, let's not go too far. This does not mean free will is fake. It does not mean you're secretly controlled by a shadow brain. It does not mean your left hand is plotting tax fraud. But it does mean the self is more complicated than it feels. The I in your head may be a collaboration, a negotiated peace treaty, a life performance where many systems somehow agree on one voice. Most days the agreement holds. You wake up, brush your teeth, look at your phone while holding your phone. Open the fridge for reasons known only to ancient spirits and low blood sugar. And it all feels like one person doing one life. But split brain experiments show what happens when the agreement breaks in a precise way. Suddenly, the hidden teamwork becomes visible. The right hemisphere may know, the left hemisphere may speak, the hand may choose, the mouth may explain, and the person may feel whole the entire time. The last part matters because the patient does not necessarily feel split. They are walking around thinking, good morning, left brain, good morning, right brain. They often feel like themselves, and maybe that is the biggest clue. Maybe feeling like oneself is not proof that brain is simple. Maybe it is proof that brain is very good at stitching. It stitches sensation into perception, perception into memory, memory into identity, identity into story. And the stitches are so fine you usually cannot see them unless something pulls the fabric apart. Split brain research pulled the fabric just enough for us to glimpse the thread. And what we saw was not a monster, it was more interesting than that. A brain that can know without saying, a mouth that can explain without knowing, a hand that can answer a question the person denies seeing, a self that may be built second by second out of many hidden parts, agreeing quickly enough to feel like one. So maybe the real mystery is not split brain patients, maybe the real mystery is the rest of us. Why do we feel so unified? Why does the voice in our head feel like the owner of the whole house? Why do we trust our explanation so much? You might say, well, I know why I do things. And yes, sometimes you do. You drink water because you're thirsty. You sleep because you're tired. You ignore a text because you need peace. And honestly, valid. But sometimes your brain moves before your story catches up. You reach for your phone without deciding to. You flinch before you know what scared you. The narration inside you is powerful, but it may not always be the first witness. Sometimes it is the editor, and editors are dangerous. They can make a messy scene look intentional. They can cut out uncertainty. So the next time you say, I know exactly why I did that, maybe leave a little room. Not doubt about everything, just room. Room for possibility that your brain is deeper than your explanation. Room for possibility that the self is not a single dot, but a conversation. A conversation so fast, so smooth, so practiced that it feels like one voice. Maybe that voice is you, but maybe it is not all of you. Maybe you are the agreement, the bridge, the story, the hand, the mouth, the hidden signal, the explanation after the fact. All of it. One brain, two hemispheres, many systems, one person. Most of the time. And that leaves us with the question split brain experiments refuses to let go of. If half your brain can know something before you know it, then how much of your mind is yours? And how much of it is simply waiting for the chance to speak? Thank you.